Lando cannot just hope for DRS passes here. He has to get innovative in the third sector.
Yeah.
And I think that is where I think it was too bread and butter. As in way too vanilla. Max knew which were the areas where Lando was going to attack. We knew which were the areas where Lando was going to attack. Moving to Lando Norris, basically, the way he conducted himself on track yesterday, only during the race, I think Max is right now bullying Lando Norris the way Lewis used to do it with Nico. The parallels are too similar. And I think there's one thing that is becoming more and more clear. The natural, and I think it's something you might see with the coming generation as well. They are not battle hardened. I don't think a Lando Norris, maybe to an extent, the guys that are coming next, they are not as ruthless racing drivers as the generation before them. And the generation before them included Max, Leclerc, George, Ocon, Albon, probably in the same boat. These are the guys that are very ruthless in terms of driving. They don't give an inch.
Yeah.
And basically they're bastards on track.
Yeah. Which we
Lando
love.
is not. Yeah, which we love that. And Lando is not.
No.
Lando is not. Because the first lap, I cannot for the life of me understand the fact that he left the door open on the inside. I just cannot.
Before I rant about that, a question for you though. Do you think it's just a case of perhaps Lando himself not being battle hardened? And the reason I say that is because it feels to me like Piastri is that aggressive, like straight out the gates. Like Piastri does seem to have that kind of aggressive streak in him. Even watching like Colapinto and Lawson this weekend, those two were pretty aggressive at points. Like, and to be fair, we'll talk about those guys later. Yeah, when you piss off Alonso, because
funny.
Alonso doesn't get pissed off easily, does he? Apart from every year. Yeah. I don't know. I just think it's a case of like not being kind of battle hardened. I think like Ed Straw from the race made this. I was listening to their podcast a couple of weeks ago, and like he made this point, and I do kind of absolutely agree with it, which is like Lando's been kind of in the midfield, not at the sharp end for so long now, that kind of he's never had to kind of deal with this level of aggression, because you're fighting over a few points at the back, and he's also fighting around drivers that realistically Norris has been the best of most of those midfielders, because he's now taking it to Max. So you have to assume like he's been a lot better than say a Tsunoda in the midfield. So he hasn't had to have this level of aggression because he's easily just faster than those guys anyway. So I do wonder if it's just being battle hardened. And the reason I think that is just because if you look at Oscar Piastri, Oscar essentially has been at the front end of the grid straight away, because there's been very little point. Like it was kind of a third of a season maybe last year where the McLaren wasn't kind of right at the sharp end. I'm not saying it was winning the whole time, but it was always kind of easily available for a podium or pushing up there. So the McLaren was always quite quick. So Oscar has come straight into Formula One, straight at the sharp end, very aggressive, whereas Lando's kind of having, I think, to kind of scrape off the dust and go, oh shit, right, I need to get my aggression level down now. I wonder if it's more that than anything else, but I agree he's definitely going to be easily bullied by Max, because Max will just be that aggressive driver. But you're right, Max would just be that guy all of the time, and I'm genuinely, I was baffled that Norris didn't keep moving over to the left, like at the start. Why did he stop moving? Unless the only logical thing I can think of is that because of the visibility being utterly shit in these cars, and because Lando has consistently had really shit starts compared to Max, maybe he did just go, oh shit, Max might actually be there, and I can't afford for the two of us to go, like, to punt each other off. Because if both of them DNF, it's advantage Max all of the time.
Not.
Well, it is.
It's not.
Why?
Think
because
about
Max
it.
already
If
has
Max
a cushion.
Imagine if Max loses 25 points yesterday to Charles, 26 points to Charles Leclerc.
Mm-hmm.
Charles
Sure,
will
but
be around
Lando's
60
not-
points.
But Lando's not
behind
worrying
Max
about
after 5
Leclerc's championship. He's just thinking about
again, he has
himself
to-
relative.
He has to sell the dummy, right? You have to.
True.
You
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
It's a common saying. You never go to a negotiation table without either be willing
Without
to
your balls
just
in your
leaving.
hands. Yeah.
Without, yeah. That's also, if you're going to a negotiation table, you need to have either the leverage, or you should be willing to just move off. That is how it is supposed to be. If you're always going to be on the defensive and always think on the lines of you have something to lose, because look, even Max could have lost something there.
Yep.
Imagine if Lando closes the door, Max has a broken front wing and he just does not score any points. Lando ends up scoring a podium. That's still advantage Lando, but that's not how Max thinks. That's how Lando thought, and that's a mindset problem. That's not a, you can say, again, maybe battle hardened is probably a case. I think one statement was quite telling. I shared it on X as well, that Charles Leclerc was questioned. Were you surprised when Max made that move? He said no. He said, I was expecting it. He said
He
has
clearly
nothing to
was
lose.
as well.
Yeah. He said I knew more or less that was going to happen. I did.
I think
Almost every fucking person, and I think I done the post a day prior that from pole, I think the last since 2021 no driver has actually led the race from pole. And something on those, and there were 4 or 5 stats. I think there were a couple of people who actually commented that you can almost guarantee and bet your bottom dollar that Max is going to go for it. And he did. Everyone and their mother knew that he was going to go for it, other than Lando. And that's just lack of race awareness, or maybe, look, Lando, when he came through the field, he was much faster than everyone. Much faster.
Yeah.
At 18, I think he was 18 or 17 years of age, he was battling George Russell for the F2 title. George was 21 something. 4-year gap between the two. So for him, it has, more often than not, he's made up for maybe the raceability by his access of pace that he had. The performance was always there. He was able to make up for it. Now it's about rounding of everything. And look, if there's something that has not been a forte of your formative years, it's very tough to inculcate that at this stage. I think you're seeing a bit of that. You are either an asshole on track or you're not. It does not come naturally.
Yeah, maybe so. And maybe the question is though, like, can Norris get that? Like you said, if it's a case of you're just an asshole on track who's aggressive, or you're not, then Lando is really screwed, because Leclerc, Russell, and Max, if we go into a season next year where the cars, and Oscar, if we go into a season next year where the cars are close, as I've said, Oscar has kind of been chipping away at those kind of inconsistencies compared to Norris. Yeah,
in
more
terms
or
of
less.
race pace, yesterday was very impressive from Oscar, because I think he didn't have the upgraded front wing, but he was
he's still not there in qualifying a lot of the time, but
that's fair. My worry for him has been since day one that his race pace has fallen off as the race has continued.
It's not happening anymore.
Yeah, he's more or less there, which is it just shows the kind of steps he's making and making improvements. So,
So I think if Lando, if that's the case and Lando doesn't become more aggressive and more ruthless, then he's going to get swallowed alive by those guys next year if they're all kind of roughly at a similar pace. Because
sorry, go for it.
I was just going to say, sorry, on like the advantage Lando would have is if we started this season again, right, as it was, with the McLaren being where it is now, I think Lando has a good chance at winning a championship because of his just outright qualifying pace, right, and the way he drives there. But the problem with that, as you said, is as soon as things get close, that's where Max will always have the edge over him, because Max is willing to do the kind of Senna Schumacher-esque thing that I've praised him for, which is to kind of go, I'm going to punt it there, and it's your decision if you want to back out, because I would rather come together than give you an inch. Like, that is the mindset. And that's why and to be fair, as you said, Leclerc, Piastri, Russell, they are all kind of roughly of that mindset. I would say Max is probably
they raced together, right?
But Max is probably together, the most... Yeah,
you might not like it. I think him and Esteban Ocon, the kind of battles they had in Formula 3.
Yeah, Ocon doesn't have the talent is the problem.
Or the car.
Or the talent.
that too, actually. I mean, no one has it when it comes to him. No. But the thing is, the kind of ruthless level of wheel-to-wheel racing that these guys are capable of. I mean, just look at Charles versus Max at Bahrain 2022. Saudi Arabia again, the very next race that season. Yep. These guys, they are hard racers. And they are built that way. Lando is, maybe he's not of that ilk. I don't know.
And it's problematic, isn't it? Because like if Lando was racing another world champion, like even a Lewis, I would say, and I apologies in advance to offending a lot of Lewis fans, but Lewis tends to...
I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan, by the way. Okay?
Apparently, you're a huge Lewis Hamilton fan, but Lewis isn't that. Like, Lewis can be aggressive and he can play the game sometimes, but Lewis is more of that kind of like play out the season,
I think Lewis was not that guy. He became that guy because things became way too easy for him. Maybe from 2019 onwards.
But my point is more like if Lando is fighting a world champion like that, or a different driver like that, I think it's easier for him to just use his kind of natural talent and pace advantage to get ahead, like he has been doing in the midfield, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
The problem here is when you're going up against a guy who I've called repeatedly the best, and I will stand by this, the best driver since Schumacher, and I say that as a Vettel fan, so I don't take that lightly. The best driver since Schumacher. You can't leave an inch because he won't. He just never will. It's not Max's style. And I kind of think that's why the title battle for me kind of ended this weekend. Like, unless something seriously changes next week or this weekend now.
Unless something changes in the head. That I think it right now... Okay, sorry, before I cut you off earlier.
No, it's okay.
I was actually about to ask you... how would you rate the entire sequence of when Lando was trying to overtake Max? It was, I think, 6 to 7 laps long, roughly. What's your take on the way he approached it?
Oh, honestly, like when it comes to defending, as we saw in lap 1, Lando has some issues. But when it comes to wheel-to-wheel racing, Lando is actually very, very good, but where he, like as we talked about for 35 minutes at the start of this, where he falls down is, like you said, that ruthlessness and just knowing the rules and the game inside and out in a way that Max, Russell and Sainz kind of, and Alonso, perfect example, do. Because I think, like, if Norris had have known the rules in and out there, he would have gone a couple of times and kept it in at the apex and gone off track then and been like, oh, I'm ahead at the apex. So, like he would have played the game. And that's where he fell down. Because if you look at the actual just wheel-to-wheel racing, Norris is brilliant. Like he doesn't really leave an inch in terms of like he's willing to kind of throw it. He's willing to take the aggressive moves. He's just not smart enough and he lets Max kind of play that game on him the whole time. And I do think part of that might be, as I said, with the battle hardening, where Lando has more to lose.
That plays a big role, yeah.
So he has more to lose and he's more in his own head, whereas Max has been through this. So maybe that's the wrong way of doing it, but like Max has gone through this so many times that Max is thinking about other things. He's like playing the game out in his head, whereas I think Norris is just gotta beat Max, which is kind of understandable when you haven't won a title. And to those of you who don't think so listening, like, look at the mistakes Max made, the aggression Max had sometimes in other seasons before he became a world champion. Because when that's hanging over you, it's like the race win for Lando. I would say Lando now is driving much better than he was before he had a race win, because you get that kind of off your back, and it's like, right, I don't have that to prove anymore. That said, he's nowhere near as good as Max at the minute, so that's tough, like, you know.
And I'll just tell you what I had when I was going through when I was just in real time, I was watching the race, the entire battle. This was what I tweeted. I said, Lando cannot just hope for DRS passes here. He has to get innovative in the third sector.
Yeah.
And I think that is where I think it was too bread and butter. As in way too vanilla. Max knew which were the areas where Lando was going to attack. We knew which were the areas where Lando was going to attack. There was no... Look, always something that stands out for me is Fernando Alonso's battle with Lewis Hamilton in Bahrain I think it was last season only.
I think so, yeah, 2023, when he kind of lunged it up the inside coming around that corner. Yeah.
And the entire time, and people don't remember this thing, there was a very key detail. Aston Martin struggled with this with the straight line speed. It had a deficit there. So what Alonso was trying to do throughout the lap was set up Lewis in terms of disturbing him, not letting him take his original line, so that when it comes to the final point where the DRS is available and when the entire kink comes, he's right there to pounce. That is the kind of things that something as brilliant a talent as Alonso does.
Well, look at, I think something... sorry, not to cut off, but just an even better example of that, I think, was it Brazil last year or was it 2022? I think it was Brazil
last year,
where Sergio Perez was hunting him down, and Perez even said he never took the same line twice ever. Like over the course of 12 or 13 laps, he approached every corner at a different line so that Perez never knew where to go, like never had any idea. And that's the brilliance of Alonso. And it's also something that Max does have. Max plays that game well.
Yes.
You know, and Lando's not there.
I've seen Lewis manipulate people that way. The thing is, when these guys are chasing someone, they're not sitting still and just waiting for the DRS zone. They're consistently trying to find different moves, trying to unsettle the guy at front. That is how it is supposed to be. You see it with Charles Leclerc, you see it with Carlos Sainz a lot. There's something that is... And, you know, and these things come naturally. These things come from your formative years. It wasn't there, and... Look, it comes down to one very simple thing. If he's going to fight against Max Verstappen on equal footing... Until and unless he gets the fear of failure out of his head, he's going to lose every time.
Yep.
And that has become very, very clear, because right now it seems like there's this obsession that he has to beat Max. Ideally, he does not need to have that. What he needs to focus on is, especially now, 5 races, 57 points is gone. It's over.
Yeah.
Let's be clear, it's done. Because it's not the Red Bull that was the 4th fastest car. It will be at worst a 3rd fastest car, because Mercedes is just going through a rut. In that scenario, you cannot... It's done. Just go into the race, get your best result. That's it. Done.
Yeah.
If that's the mindset, maybe he might... And maybe if you're in a battle with Max Verstappen, don't worry about the DNF. Just go for it. I think he was too worried about the DNF. That's why you didn't see too many lunges. That's why you didn't see too many aggressive moves that maybe we might have seen otherwise. But again,
I think he needs to do that for the next... He needs to have that attitude for the next 5 races. Like the next 5 races, he should absolutely have the attitude of, well, I've essentially lost this unless something goes crazy anyway. So I might as well just be absolutely over the top, out of my mind aggressive. Because if Max DNFs and I don't... Get the mental
block off. Because if this mental block continues into 2025, that's... You're conceding another title.
Yep.
Yeah, already conceding another title. 5 races, use this to just beat Max once or twice or whatever. Unless until you can do that, he has an uphill climb in front of him.
If he sees it as nothing to lose now, it could end in a situation where he could throw Max into a situation where the title could come back to him by having that attitude. Because if he changes that mindset now, right, and we go into Mexico or Brazil, and Max has kind of gotten used to, well, Lando won't defend that harshly, and Lando all of a sudden just chucks his car in front of him, Max isn't expecting it, Max DNFs and Lando doesn't, all of a sudden game's back on. You know, that's it. So I think you're right. I think Lando kind of has nothing to lose and everything to gain by just for the rest of the season now unlocking or at least trying to be an absolute aggressive monster.
Yeah.
But I think you might be right. Maybe it's not there.
I think these are something that come naturally, and he does not have that right now. I think that's just he might have it next season.
I think it either comes naturally or you need like a big kind of blow up moment. Because, you know, like in all of our lives, there's a moment that turns you into a bit of a cunt, you know, like, so maybe he just needs like Max and him to have a serious fucking, not a dangerous crash, but like a serious incident.
I think ideally he should be pissed by what Max said in the press conference where he was questioned if he felt bad about Lando, and he said, no, they've been complaining a lot lately. And if you're Lando and you're listening to it, you're like, okay, so on one side you want to be a friend, and then these are the comments you want to put forth. Then gloves are off. 5 races.
Realistically,
I'll do whatever I want to.
I mean, realistically, he should have already kind of, I think, mentally said to Max, "Look, we're not getting the jet together anymore. Let's talk in December when the season's over. Like for the moment, I need to keep you as a rival in my head. We'll be friends again. You know, once the season's over." And I think it benefits Max to go, no, come on the jet. We're all pally. It's fine. So, you know, like as you said, Max is probably playing that game as well. Of no, I'll keep him close because then we're friends. It's all fine. He's not going to try and run me off the road, you know, because we're mates. You know, and if I do it to him, he'll forgive me. We'll have champagne on the jet home, and it'll all be fine again. You know. So maybe Norris does need to kind of go into that Rosberg, Lewis Hamilton mindset where we need to hate each other for a few months. You know,
he should have by now. Well, if he has,
it's too late now, unfortunately. For next year, but for this year,
for now it's too late. Look, for now, I think what Lando needs to do is he needs to talk to Rosberg, and he needs to actually understand one very basic thing about what it means to have momentum. Rosberg ended the 2015 season with 4 consecutive wins, and 3 consecutive wins, and that was the kind of momentum which helped him go into 2016 and win 4 races in a row. Why? Because he had the belief that he could beat Lewis, which he didn't have in 2015. Lando needs to get that belief that he can beat Max.